Welcome to Level Up, the Career Playbook podcast, otherwise known as How to Be Better at Your Job. This is your go-to podcast for unpacking the stories, the strategies, and skills that empower all of us to take our careers to the next level. I am your host, Brian Bell, and I am so excited to have all of you with me today, no matter where you are. This podcast is not just about career advancement. It's about understanding what drives us, what challenges us, and how we build authentic relationships in our professional lives. Now, today, we're diving deep with an amazing guest, Seabass Gibson, otherwise known as Seabass. He's a customer success pro, and he's known for his ability to forge impactful connections and drive success in the tech landscape. Seabass, welcome to the podcast.
I want you to introduce me all the time. That was very sweet. Thank you.
If we're live, when I get this podcast going, I'm going to have smoke and I'll have fireworks and cheerleaders.
Beautiful.
I would have a way better intro for you because you deserve it. But for now,
That's perfect. That was great.
How the hell are you?
I'm doing really well. I don't know when everybody's going to get a chance to listen to this, but it's the 23rd of December. I've just officially shut down for the rest of the year. So I'm feeling really good. It's been a long year.
I appreciate you because I know I'm probably holding you from actually starting your true
No,
holiday.
you're not. This is a part of like relaxation, and this is super fun. I've done nothing today, so it's been great.
Good for you. Good for you. All right. Before we dive in, who the hell is Seabass? Why do you think I invited you to join us here today? And like I so weirdly just told you, you were number 3 on my list of 75 people, and technically you should be 1, but that's a whole nother story.
No,
Why do you
3 is a good number.
Who are you? Tell me more about who Seabass is so more people can understand what I know.
Yeah, number 3 is a good number, so like don't feel bad about that. Who is Seabass? I think like there's 2 answers to that question. I think the answer that I'm most leaning towards is like I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a cousin. I am just someone who aspires to leave the world a little bit better than when I found it. I think perhaps the reason that you asked me to come on here is I've been at the company I'm at, and within the company I'm at for the last, let's call it 5 years now. And I've been in the customer success space for the last 8 or so years. And so I think you might, for some interesting reason, think that I have some sort of knowledge or lots of insight to share around how I've navigated my career, and perhaps share some sort of minor advice that I have for individuals who are listening as well.
Very humble, but for people listening, I worked with Seabass for a bit. You're magnetic. You have a way of making people feel seen, and that then connects with customers. And every single person that's worked with you is like, oh, Seabass. And so you're one of those people that you just don't forget in your entire career. And so there's some magic that you have that is I don't see, especially when you show up to work. And so that's why I'm trying to how can I learn more from how you show up? Because there's just some magic there that we're going to try to uncover. But you be humble and pretend like it's nothing. But we're going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to see if I can probe and get some more answers. All right. So this is the Level Up podcast. This is supposed to be sports related. I have this side business called Mom HR. I'm trying to build some HR tech. So it's all sports related. And Mom HR is based off of Mama mentality from Kobe Bryant. And that's the, pursuit of excellence. And it's about the day-to-day journey and not the destination. And so that's what the whole theme of this whole thing is about, is getting to the nitty-gritty of what is the work that you do every single day to become excellent and show up the way you are. And so part of this sports theme is we have sports-related segments, and the first segment is the pregame. So we're going to get to the beginning. We're going to start from your foundational years, your motivations, and just kind of dig in from the very beginning. So if you were going to think about from the very beginning, maybe even college, but especially when you first started your career, what core values, are there any core values or beliefs that have guided you so far in your career, especially when building relationships?
Yeah. So I think like sometimes the backstory always is super helpful. I was raised by a single mom. I lost my stepdad, who was the man of our house, at a pretty young age. And so like when I think about just this landscape of creating the best experiences for people, that is something my mom took very, 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 very seriously. There was never a Christmas that wasn't absolutely amazing. There was never a birthday that was absolutely amazing. And I think at a really early age, I really learned the sacrifice to create those experiences. And then I also learned to enjoy the experiences and creating those experiences, again, at a pretty early age. So I would say like from a foundational perspective, that really shaped and guided I don't know if I knew where I wanted that to go or take me in my career. I'm West African, proudly. I'm Liberian, and I'm first generation as well. And so anything for a doctor or a lawyer in this country, sometimes your parents tend to have a bit of a different sway with. And so, I started in one career and then kind of pivoted into this like tech space. But, one of the first roles that I ever had was at this elementary school fundraising company. So sidebar, I do a lot of public speaking and a lot of like getting people super excited and fired up and motivated. And people are often saying like, how the heck are you able to speak to thousands of people at any given time? And it's like, I got elementary school kids fired up on a like daily basis at this company. And if you can get elementary school kids fired up, you can get anyone in the world fired up. And
Yes.
one of the core principles of that organization, Boosters On is the name of the organization, is creating raving fans. And they were
Creating what fans?
raving fans.
Right? Raving fans. Okay.
They were super, super, super intentional about what went into that experience. I will always be grateful for that company. I'm still pretty good friends with a couple of folks that I met there. But this idea around creating raving fans was just like, it was, core principles like show gratitude. And showing gratitude, show up as your full self. There were just these like core principles in this like creating raving fans that took our customers from this place of for us to a place of with us. And that has carried me through my whole career. Every job or role that I've ever had, a lot of where I am today is like really grounded in this idea that, hey, I want to leave people a little bit better than I found them, but also I want to create raving fans of maybe me, but more importantly, the organization that I'm representing as well. So I would say like that career plus some of the influences of my mom really kind of shaped where I am and who I am today.
So is that something that is in your brain at all times? I mean, obviously it's kind of like you've been raised this way, but are you thinking specifically, when I go to work today or when I go to that customer, I am trying to create a raving fan? Is that a mantra when you wake up? Or is that just now built in because it's been that way from your mom for so long?
Yeah, no, I think it's built in, but I also think like I'm pretty intentional about it as well. In the business, I support top accounts at the organization I'm at today. And so my accounts are not often changing. So I've been with these individuals for many, many years. So what I'll say about that is creating a raving fan, a lot of it is active listening. And so a customer A is from Colombia and has 3 kids. And so hey, I want to pause and just take a moment to how's home? How are the kids? How was Joey in soccer? Those little key moments show our customers that we're listening. And there are a lot of people who did that for me. And what that did for me is help me feel seen. And I think that's one of the core elements of creating raving fans. And so I think throughout our conversation today, we'll go through some other things that I do to kind of keep that consistent. But I would say like that's just one really tangible way that I ensure people feel seen in hopes of then creating that raving fan in the future for our customers as well.
Literally about to say that you've made me feel seen and others feel seen. So that's very important. You also mentioned briefly about bringing your authentic self. And I'm going to bring race into this, but I would say as a Black man showing up to work, sometimes in spaces I know that we feel, can I bring my authentic self? And it really feels like you have brought your authentic self. Has this ever backfired, or how do you approach truly bringing your authentic self versus could this backfire on me and not be appreciated?
Yeah. So there's a couple intersectionalities to my life. I am a Black gay man in America, and I can even throw in I'm first generation, and I'm Liberian, and there's all of those elements make up who I am. I made a commitment when I came out to my family that I would continuously show up in this world as my full self. Now, when I got into the workplace, I had to refine that a little bit because it's still a workplace and it's still a professional setting, and I still owe respect. And there's still going to be moments where perhaps for good, for bad, or indifferent, like there are going to be moments in which I feel that perhaps actions, whether it be biased or non-biasedly, could be motivated towards me. And so all of that to say, I've learned how to show up with my full self with boundaries in certain situations. And even taking it a step further, some might call it code switching. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that, But a conversation I might have with Brian might be a little bit more what we call real than a conversation I might have with another coworker, right? I'm creating the space for Brian to feel like he can also show. I'm giving Brian permission to also show up as his full self. But also with my other coworker, we may not be there, or we may not necessarily have a commonality that allows us to go that deep. And so we'll perhaps just keep it where it is. Even I have leaders that are white men who traditionally and historically in my life have been the most intimidating group of individuals for me as a Black queer man in the workspace. I have learned how to still show up as my full authentic self with those individuals in a way that's a respectful, mutual, but also authentic too. And yeah, I wish I knew the exact formula. I think a part of it is understanding that the commonality between us could be perhaps a bit different, but the respect that's given is something that's even more important. And all that happens through authentically showing up as yourself. And the last thing I'll say around that is you showing up as your full self often gives permission to other people to show up as their full selves as well. And if you can cut that down pretty early on, you get a lot more done in conversations, and you do a lot more. You can get to where you're going a lot quicker.
Very true. And okay, so you are your authentic self, but I think something that's really, really important to call out, because me being in HR, I've had these conversations quite a bit, especially with people of color and women, and kind of the minority type of folks that show up at companies. You can be authentically yourself. However, you do have to have some boundaries and some lines. And so it's being also intentional about, yes, be yourself, but there's that box
And
you also need to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Be yourself and XYZ. Yeah.
Okay. Walk me through, I know you as the customer success pro working top accounts, but you said when you first started, you were working with kids. How did you pivot? Imagine when you were in middle school and high school, you didn't say, when I grow up, I want to be in customer success. I didn't know about customer success till maybe 10 years ago, to be honest with you. How did you find this role? How did you find this part of the organization? How did you pivot there?
Yeah. So like I said, we don't need to go into too much detail about I had this first career and then went to Boosterthon, and Boosterthon was this. What I knew is that I think if I think about kind of my life's work is, I did this mission building course for myself many, many years ago, and created this mission that I still a lot, believe in, that was I want to be a safe space for every single person. And I'm far way away from that. I'm going to be the first one to say that. But some of the elements of that is leaving individuals a lot better. I've had this affinity for creating incredible experiences. I'm the guy, a friend bought a new house. I'm the one who's throwing the housewarming because I want to make sure that they feel super celebrated for this milestone. Birthdays on it, anniversaries on it, engagements, those are the, I may not be great at planning it, but those are usually the ideas that I bring to the table. So tech was super appealing to me, and at that time as well. This is, I don't know, what's 8 or 9 years ago. Just call it 2015. I'm okay. Well, what's what? Where's what? How do I necessarily navigate into this? I joined a super, super small startup, and that was one of the best things I ever did. And this is after elementary school fundraising. I joined a super, super small startup. It was the biggest grind of my life, but it also exposed me to all of the different roles that it takes to run an organization. And it was in there I found this customer success space. And not only was I a customer success manager, I was also a renewals manager. I was also doing some account management as well. There was so many elements that went into my job at this startup, but it gave me respect, and it perhaps gave me a bit of guidance into where I wanted this next part of my career to go. Fast forward, I then went into the implementation space. And if I'm honest with you, I love the idea of not being with the same customer all the time. I love that I get in, I implement them, I make them super excited and jazzed up, and then I hand them off, right? What that did was gave me respect for the customer's journey when they first come to us, and ensuring all of the pieces, the elements are made. And then I got into traditional customer success, which is the long-lasting relationship building, the long-lasting, partnership between the customer and the business as well. And so that's kind of the journey. It started with and it's a big recommendation I'll often give individuals who want to get in customer success. I'm go to a tiny startup and see how the sausage is made, and then work your way up from there. I always say that my next company will not be a super large company. It'll be a medium-sized company. I joined Asana when it was 300 employees. And I don't know what, know what the future holds for me, but I think I want to be in a company that's perhaps maybe double the size of that at the next organization that I decide to go to, and just kind of like build my career up that way. But that's the journey. That was the journey.
Let's rewind real quick. So why do we need your role in customer success? Like what, obviously you're talking to customers, but why? What are you doing? What is the benefit to any business?
Yeah. Well, so I think like organizations have different theories on customer success. I think the theory in which we hold it at Asana, the organization that I work at, is that for a subset of accounts, we need and we need a liaison between our customer and our business. So many times our customers have these very, very, very unique needs, these very, very, very unique and these very, very, very unique requests that they make of the business. And it's up to me as a customer success manager to ensure that those asked needs and requests are made present to the business. I'm an internal advocate for my customers. So when you say, why is it needed? These are the customers that are supporting the business, right? Without the customers, we don't have a business. And so it's in an organization's best interest to ensure that there is some sort of relationship management that's happening between, and for some companies, they don't believe in having a customer success manager for every single one of their customers. And that's their prerogative for sure. But for some subset of your customers, especially the customers that are more likely to grow and create and spend more revenue, it is almost imperative that you have someone who is being a liaison. More additionally, customer success manager on the business side is helping my company forecast what growth, or unfortunately, what non-growth will look like within our customers as well. We call it churn. And so being able to give a heads up to my business is also imperative. So it's never a surprise when an organization is like, hey, we need to get rid of 150 seats. It is also then my job to ensure that I have a crystal clear reason as to why they're getting rid of those seats. And I have done every single thing that I can do to save it. Now, a lot of the times, a customer success manager is actually able to mitigate and save the churn within an account. Sometimes it's completely out of our control. There's not anything we can do. So if I like to break it down to those three areas, it's just like continuity amongst the customer and the business. It's like revenue. I don't want to call it saving revenue, but in a way, in layman's term, it is quite literally like saving the revenue of the business by having a customer success manager who's ensuring that the business can always forecast where that customer is at any given time to protect or to earn more revenue.
When you break it down like that, this actually sounds like a lot of work, sounds a bit complicated. And I don't think you just wake up one day and you're really great at being somebody that's a liaison for customers. So walk me through, was there any specific mentors or leaders or a course or a place? How did you show up now day to day? Was there somebody that really helped your approach, shaped your views, allowed you to show up more authentically? How did you learn? Who are the people that were most impactful?
Yeah, I think every organization I've ever gone to, I've looked at the way that the individual who was managing the largest account moved. So a lot of it was, if the largest account is Brian Bell Incorporated, who's the customer success manager? A lot of the times in true Seabass fashion, I reach out to them and I'm like, hey, we'd love to understand a bit more about your role, about your job. Those are the individuals within the workplace that really influence the way that I think about the technicalities of customer success. And then, yeah, I kind of use a little bit of life also inform how I think about customer success in some interesting ways as well. Like, for example, what I listen to so many podcasts, but I listen to a couple of podcasts that are really centered around human emotion. Brene Brown is one of my favorite individuals. And while her stuff is very personal to self, she said something along the lines of one day that really transformed me. She was like, relationships are built in the small, mundane conversations. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
Right. How was your day? That is how relationships are built. Not, hey, can we strategically get to this area? And so these occurrences have also really helped shape my career in a lot of ways as well, because it allowed me to show up as a better individual to my customers, and they deserve that. And then last but not least, I think if I think about my goals and my values, I think some of the things that I'm really grateful that I've been able to stick to and that Asana does allow me to show up as is do what works for you. They, of course, have parameters of how to be a customer success manager at Asana, but I think they give us a fair amount of autonomy to really do the things that we feel like work. And if it doesn't work, then we refine and we iterate and we move forward. But I've been able to still fail and try things that may work and things that may not work. And I think being in the customer success space, you got to know that no customer is the same. Playbooks are nice, but playbooks are only playbooks. They are not Bible on how to get customers to be successful. And so, yeah, pulling in those three elements of life, pros in the industry, and then just trial and error have really allowed me to show up, I think, as my wherever I am on the spectrum of customer success manager today.
Key takeaway, I think, from me that I got from you is you went and found the mentor or the pro. You literally looked at who are the best people, who's working on the biggest accounts. I've had it in my career, and the other podcast guests, many of them, there was some person that just, they were lucky and they took them on their wing and they learned a lot. For you, it's, I'm going to go find the best people and I'm going to kind of work my way into their world.
Yeah. And I want to say this, there's a lot of people who have been wildly influential on my career. But when I think about that question, it is really is like, I needed to be as hungry, and it doesn't always, I want to be super honest. It doesn't always come where you're, hey, someone found me, took me in and like folded me. It does not always happen that way by any means. So yeah, it was a matter of me finding and asking for help, and then understanding that there's so many people in this world, in this universe, who are willing to help. They just need to be asked.
That's good to hear, and a good reminder. People do want to help if you ask.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the second segment, the power up. Let's talk about building relationships a little bit more. We did talk about this for a second earlier, and in the many intersections of being Black, being first generation, being gay, bringing yourself to work, that's a no-no. When you're being authentic, I think part of building a relationship and genuine connections is being vulnerable and telling people who you are and really putting yourself out there. How far are you going with your customers and with your coworkers of being your real self? Not just being, but bringing your real self.
Yeah, I think bringing my real self is my default, right? And that's a very intentional action. In that, like, I want to be maybe a bit more clear around what bringing my real self means, the conversation. I'm never coming into a conversation and the first thing I'm saying is, this is the X, Y, like, I'm never coming to a conversation and not speaking in a tone that's not like mine. I'm never coming to a conversation and watering myself down. I want to be super clear about what I am coming to the conversation. And I'm going to come to the conversation with clarity, because that is who I am. I'm going to come to the conversation with direction, because that is what I possess. And I'm going to come to the conversation with vision, because that is something that I deeply believe is a core value of mine. And so those are the things that I do come to the conversation with. So that's a part of bringing my full self, but I don't know how to define the measurement of that, right? The measurement is simply that I have given myself permission to feel free enough with boundaries to the individual that I'm speaking with to just authentically be me. And that shows up in the jokes that I tell. I have to gauge my audience and make sure that it's appropriate. That comes with maybe the questions that I ask. And this comes from a project that I did, actually. So I'll share a little bit of that. The backstory that I got broken up with for the first time was one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through. And in the grand scheme of things, it was not the hardest thing I've ever been through. In that moment, it was very tough. And so I said, you know what? I met this guy. He actually interviewed me, and he was like, yeah, I just met 100 people in 100 days. I was like, wait, I want to do that. I was like, I want to meet 100 people in 100 days. His lesson from his journey was that he got rejected. And he loved getting rejected because it made him more resilient. I was like, okay, that's what I need. I just need to get rejected a bunch of times. And I can go back in the dating world and I can get broken up with any time it happens again. And so I did. I went and I met 100 people in 100 days, and I got so many no's. And the premise of it was like, I'd walk up to Brian, I would say, hey man, my name is Sebastian, I'm on the show, meeting 100 people in 100 days. I have a couple questions for you, and then we'll take a selfie afterwards. Are you cool with that? Yeah or nay? They would say, absolutely the fuck not. Or they would say, absolutely. So I remember leaving that experiment thinking, there's so many people who are willing to share their story. They just need to be asked. And that has translated in a lot of areas of my life. There's so many people who are willing to help. And the other part of that is that there's so many people who need the outlet. And the outlet is like, I cried in aisles at grocery stores with people. I remember one of the most touching stories, I'll share two. The most touching stories I had is this lady had lost her mom the Monday. I met her on Wednesday. She lost her mom the Monday prior. And she was just going through it. And she needed someone to sit with her. We were in the seasonings aisle of Publix. I'll never forget it. And we just cried together. And I met a lady, one of the questions I always ask is, what's your biggest regret? And she said, I drank way too much and missed my kids growing up. And it was super authentic and it was super real. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, ironically, I met her in the wine aisle. She wasn't grabbing wine, everyone. She was shopping for the things that were on the other side. It was just if you ever see the photo, it has a bunch of wine behind us. But I to bring that back to your question, a part of being who I am is allowing people to share their stories because I believe that it's so important. And creating that moment has created far more moments of actual business critical work. Okay, now that we've gotten personal out of the way, how can Asana help company A solve their goals for this?
And now I
that's more
trust
broadly
you.
speaking.
And now I can be
Trust me. Now, like we form some sort of connect. Like, and it doesn't always work like that. I want to be very honest. Sometimes they're like, fine, and I'm like, okay, now time for the next thing. Sometimes that's how the conversation goes as well. But like that has led to more great for me than it hasn't. And that is at the core showing up as to who I am. It was a very
but I
windy
love
road
that.
to kind of get there. Like that is kind of the more tangible ways of the things in my life that have shaped who I am and allows me to show up as who I am.
I think a key takeaway there was the 100 people in 100 days. So it's 100 days in consecutive or just over the year?
Consecutively.
Okay. And it's anybody at any place, just go up.
Anybody, any place, my rules that I couldn't know them.
And you feel like that it added resiliency. What does that mean? Like on day 101, what do you think was different from you or about you after going through that?
Actually, I think I learned the biggest lesson from like day 15. Beginning of it where I've had 5 no's today. It is 8 o'clock. I'm at home and I'm really comfortable. So I'm going to go to Arby's and get a milkshake and hope that I just meet somebody there. Who do I meet at Arby's? The CEO of Habitat for Humanity, who's, here's my story. And we end up forging this really cool relationship. That's what that taught me. From a resilience perspective, for every no that I got, I learned on a day 101. For every no that I got, it just meant that the yes was going to be even sweeter. I firmly believe that to this day. I apply that into many areas. And so disappointment is really, really tough, but I understand what it means on the other side. That's like still an evolution, a work in progress, but I understand what it means on the other side today.
Okay.
Because of that extent.
Let's lean in more on when it didn't work out. So think about a time you went against some heavy resistance from either a person you worked with or a customer. When it's pushback, no, your charm's not working. People didn't want to open up to you. They didn't want to tell you what's going on. How do you navigate the pushback, especially within an organization? Actually, both. But it's great when everything's going your way and everybody loves you and everybody's happy. But when it's not going your way, how do you personally navigate this?
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that. I think in both examples, perhaps I'll probably only share one, but in both examples, I think what it has been exposed with the most is that emotional intelligence is really important. I had a counterpart. So for most customer success managers are paired up with an account manager or account executive, right? And I had one particular scenario where my account executive and I'm going to we butted heads, and that is for the lack of a better term. And I mean, this is like the beginning of the year, so I'm like, we still have to work together all the time. So I have to somehow figure this out. But I wasn't that calm. I was actually super angry, visibly. I was super upset. I was very annoyed. I wasn't showing up well at all. And it was a colleague of mine, someone who I definitely consider to be a dear friend. He's a coworker and someone who called me out on my shit. He was like, you don't have really good emotional intelligence, especially in this situation. And for him to see that in me, it was like, it stung a little bit, but that's like his job as a friend of mine. And it made me kind of sit back and think a little bit. And so for every customer situation that didn't go my way either, it's like, kind of less about what happens and more about how you respond to it. I am firmly believing that it does not go my way at work 80% of the time. Like it is, there are just I'm managing massive organizations, tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of employees that from the top, I don't control what their day-to-day looks like. I don't control what like I have a company right now that's in my book. They might get acquired. Do you know what that means for me? That puts so many roles at risk, which then, we are a B2B, that's in a license model consumption. That puts a lot of licenses. There's nothing I can do to control that. And so how I show up in those moments really, really matter is what I've learned from the moments where it didn't all work out. And showing up from I think some of the tangible ways, I think I can get very caught up in my anxiety about the moment. So a lot of it is actually pausing, sleeping on it, not thinking about it for a couple of hours or day, and then kind of reassessing the next day. And the first question I always ask myself, and I say it out loud too, people probably think I'm crazy, is how much of this is in my control and how much of this is not in my control?
Yeah.
The things that are in my control, put your big boy pants on, Seabass, and get it done. Things that are not, they're not. And the last thing is, there's actually been unique ways for me to show up because of those moments too. To my account executive, hey man, talk to me a little bit about how you prefer to receive feedback. Or is there something that happened in this encounter that I just need to be aware of for next time so it doesn't go this far? At the end of the day, we have to support each other. And I really like the guy. Like he's a good dude. He's a really good dude. Like, and I really do mean that. And so all that's to say, like how you show up in those moments really matter. And in the customer example that I gave, it's really been a conversation around how can Asana help you guys be successful in this moment of uncertainty? Because guess what? My stakeholders that I'm working with on a day-to-day, they don't know if they're employed next week. They don't know if they're employed next month. And so while there might be a turn risk for me today, use this opportunity to show up in a unique way because they won't forget that.
That's awesome. I want to dig somewhere. Emotional intelligence is, we all need to be better at it. And when you kind of got called out and, for you had a good friend that was like, hey, that's not exhibiting emotional intelligence. How did you get better? I know that you said that you take a day or a minute or take the night. Were there other specific things you did to say, I am going to be better at emotional intelligence? I'm asking this question because I was trying to develop some coursework or some kind of guidance for some of other sales reps on how to be more emotionally intelligent. And there's a bunch of just buzzwords and crap out there. But for you, what did you do to say, I'm going to be better at this big word, emotional intelligence thing?
Yeah, I mean, so when Dave is the individual, Dave Shin, shout out to you wherever you might be in this world. Absolutely love you. Dave Shin is the one who called me out on this. And I remember how I felt in that moment. I remember thinking, how am I visibly showing up right now? And that was a huge call for myself. And it has now been the question I continuously ask myself every single moment where I feel that anger creeping in is how am I physically showing up right now? Face is twisted, turn your camera off. I'm super angry. Hey, Brian, just love it. We can just take a pause. We maybe meet back in 5 minutes. I wouldn't do that to a customer, but I would figure out how to have power to the customer. Those are like, it's really super introspective. And from an emotional perspective, it has to be tackled right away, or else you will find yourself getting deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper. And it's not the way I want to show up, and it's not the leader I want to be. Go into a conversation where things are like on a group call, a forecast call, where things are kind of spicy and it's not everyone's favorite place to be. And you just very well might be target or exhibit A. How did they respond? Yep. Got it. On it. Thank you. Move on. That's
a great call. It's almost pretending you have a mirror in front of you and showing up stoic. I always think about some of the best coaches are going back to a sports team. Team is up by 20 or the team loses at a last second, 3-pointer or field goal, and they still show up with this stoic face. And so especially in those times that You might be getting your ass handed some, showing up and being professional. So it's really having that mirror, and that's really, really good call. I'm going to make sure I remember that as well. It's easy to tell other people, but it's all wait. Thank you, Seabass. That's a great one.
Yeah, the mirror is important.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the next segment called the playbook. Let's go a little bit more in depth of how you approach success. You were just talking about stakeholders, but how do you go about engaging, influencing your key stakeholders, your boss's boss, your boss, whoever, like the people that really can forge your career, that can help you get a promotion? How do you engage and influence those? And especially the people that aren't maybe Seabass fans to start. What's the sauce to be diplomatic, but be effective and get what you need?
Yeah. I'm not saying this works for every single person, but I'll talk about my experience. So when I joined Asana, we were 300 employees, and I remember thinking to myself, the spectrum of individuals at this organization is absolutely insane. And I actually kind of love it. And, I always had this mindset, and I think I learned it in some sort of like career development course. It's like your board of directors. Those are the people that are speaking your name in rooms that you're not in. And I think I also owe it to reach one behind me as well. So those are the individuals who are perhaps at a different level than I am, perhaps lower, earlier in their career. Those are the individuals that I also owe it to as well. And it's finding those two things. I remember when I first came to Asana, I wanted to speak to people in different parts of the business. I remember I got our head of diversity and inclusion on the line. Her name was Sanja. And I just said, yeah, we love Sanja. I just was, hi, I'm Sebastian. I just joined Asana. And I don't really have an agenda. And she's like, okay, hi. Like, she loved it. We had a really, really good conversation. I did that with our head of product, our head of people. I did that with, at the time, our head of customer success. I don't think I had a motive other than I want these individuals to know who I am, because that's really important. And that was the first thing I did, right?
Can I ask you there, when you had those meetings, did you say specifically, the point of this meeting is to how did you intro yourself when you got on the Zoom or face-to-face? Was it, I just want you to know who I am, or what'd you do?
I didn't have an agenda for a lot of those conversations. My name is Seabass. I'm really excited to be at Asana. Just moved here from Atlanta, and what's your favorite? I would come up with shit on the fly. Like, what's your favorite thing about Asana? Some of those conversations lasted 5 minutes, and some of those conversations lasted the whole 30 minutes, right?
Sorry to interrupt, but I think this is some practical stuff for people to take away. You sent a Slack, I imagine, or you used Asana or whatever. You're like, hey, I would like to put time in your calendar, ... Or did you just put time in the calendar? Like, how did you actually go about doing that to get your time?
I would love some time to connect, to kind of talk, to introduce myself, and talk about your time here at Asana.
Okay.
That was always my opening line, and people are always willing to speak to their experiences. Back to the storytelling thing that I told a little bit earlier. So I don't think I got any no's from that, surprisingly. We're a smaller company. I think if I did that today, it'd be a little harder and trickier and, some things to navigate. But that was, I think everyone at the time has said yes. And so it's kind of what the benefits being able to join a small company. I'm not sure this is mutually connected. In some worlds that I think it is, I remember and this is even before your time at Asana, we launched this thing called Cup of Tea with CP, which was Asana's take on Ask Me Anything session with members of our executive or C-suite. And they asked me to be the host. And I remember the individual that asked me, she was like, hey, we just thought about you in a meeting that we were in, and somebody just remember meeting you in passing and thought you'd be really good for this. And so when we think about from a brand building perspective, those are the things that are super, super helpful. But I'm going to bring it back to your original questions. How do I essentially build those individuals? That was the first thing that I did. And I think the second thing is the thing that people often miss. I then had to perform.
Sure.
That was the second thing that I had to do. Because at the end of the day, knowing who Seabass is, but not knowing him as a performer or being good at his job is an absolute wash. So I made those connections and those individuals, some of which we had recurring time afterwards. A lot of those individuals were going to be the individuals that were going to help me become good at my job as well. And then I performed. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm putting all this pressure on myself. And it's no, I owe this to myself. And this is a part of building a trusted force behind you, is being able to do your job that they're paying you for at this organization. So I did that. I did my job. And I like to think that I did it pretty well. That's the second step in building and forging these connections as well. And then for individuals who have the luxury of being in organizations that support employee resource groups, those are really good things to get involved with. I had the pleasure of starting Black Asana, which is the ERG that supports our Black and Brown community at Asana. That was a really unique way to meet individuals. That was a really unique way to work cross-functionally. That is probably one of the best things I've ever done at Asana is that. And then the last and final thing, is something that I'm not always the best at, is then you need to figure out from those individuals that you've made connections with or new connections with, you need to figure out what your asks are. And I never can make an ask, and I've told you this before too, Brian. I will never ever make an ask unless I have performed to show myself worthy of that ask. I'm really, really intentional about that. I'm not sure where that necessarily comes from, but I'm not going to ask you for if I've not showed you why. And so sometimes the ask is, hey, I'm really interested in thinking about moving to New York. And so will you just keep me top of mind if you hear about anything? Or, hey, I'm trying to navigate my product friends, my friends who work in product and engineering. No one shows favoritism, but my customers have product requests. So through the relationships that I've built strategically, those are individuals that I'm going to float my product request by to get their take on it first because we have a relationship. I'm going to make those asks to them. And then there's leaders like my CRO or leaders like my head of customer experience that I have different asks for. And it's like, I want to grow at Asana. I want to be at Asana. Can you keep me in mind as you think about what growth looks like within this customer base? And so that becomes a bit of a kind of a second thing. And then you'll be so surprised, and I think a little bit of it, I try to be super humble. I think the universe, I think God, whoever people choose to identify with, but I have been very lucky in my career to have been good at that part. I have been good at just figuring out, I believe in the law of attraction. I genuinely do. And I just feel like the universe has definitely put some of the most incredible people in my past that have wanted to advocate for me and who has wanted to be on my side. And I don't take that lightly by any means, but that's how you build internally. And a lot of those conversations were and are awkward. We don't have a lot in common, but these are the individuals that you never know where that individual can and will take you in their career. And I still don't think I know the full gamut of how these individuals will impact my career or my life in the future either.
So it's put yourself out there. The universe did give, but it's also you gave too.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The law of attraction matters. And so it wasn't just sitting around and waiting for it to happen, but putting yourself out there, showing up, doing the work. Do the work, which I think so many people forget. It's just keep your head down and do it as best as possible, and hopefully better than everybody else. And then also intentionally asking and not hoping that people just float things for you. You have to make sure you're being intentional. That's a really good call out. Let's keep going down that line here. So you're building your stakeholder connections, relationships, and we've talked about how you've been able to make things work. And that's through hard work, through relationships, through perseverance, resilience. Let's talk about a specific time that things didn't work, a real failure or a setback. I think that losing and failure teach a lot more than success does a lot of the time. So tell me a time that happened to you and how did that shape now how you show up?
Yeah, it's a question that can go in so many different ways, but I'll probably use to date one of the more harder experiences that I had. I got fired from an organization that I was working at. I'd given them 3 years, and I could go into many reasons as to why I think they did it and, what was the motivation behind it. But what it taught me more than anything, and this is through a lot of soul searching, is that I am 150% responsible for myself. And even if it necessarily doesn't put me in the best light, I have to take accountability for the role that I played in that situation. And I felt like a failure walking out of that organization, being walked out that day. I felt like a failure calling my mom and saying that, hey, I've been let go from a company. I felt like a failure. Just like, I didn't show up the way that I was supposed to. And because I didn't, there were repercussions for that. And so it allowed me now to this very day, to the best of my ability, will always take 100% responsibility for the role that I played. It's never anyone else's fault. So that's the first piece. I think the second piece that it taught me is that, I say this super humbly, but I'm a bad man pajama, okay? I remember they were like, we're only going to pay you for 3 months. And I was like, I'm never going to find a job in 3 months. I found a job in 3 weeks. And what that taught me is like, my wildest dreams, I couldn't even imagine how good this would work out. I really did that. I put in a lot of work and interviewed a ton. Like, we felt really good about that. And then I think the third thing they taught me as well is that like, failure is absolutely necessary for success. And the failure that I felt ultimately taught me how to show better in the workplaces that I went to afterwards. It ultimately showed me how to also like hold individuals, like other individuals accountable as well for their actions and what that might look like. Something that it's a message that I preach to Black Sonnet, especially who are early in their career, pretty often, that you are 100% responsible for you. So yeah, like, I mean, that day you cannot tell me that I was like, it was not the end of the world, but I really think how I bounced back from that.
Okay, so it's own your shit,
Own it.
accept it, and be dope.
Period.
Be great, but own your shit. That's beautiful. All right. Next segment, game day rituals. We're going to just talk about how you show up day to day when you think about just the actual day of Seabass. So what does a successful morning look like for you? What do you do to start your day? And very key on successful. What are you doing to start your day?
Giving myself enough time to lay in bed. That is some of my favorite mornings, is why I have enough time to just lay in bed. Also, Nico wants to say hi, everyone. Can you say hi?
Hi, Nico.
This is not Nico. This is Simon. Anyway, that's like a really perfect part of the day is I have given myself enough time to just sit in the silence of my home. My home is silent. The streets are not. I live in New York City. It's never silent, but that noise is also pretty beautiful too. It's a cup of coffee, and it's like pretty limited, maybe a little bit of news intake. And what it does, it allows me to sit and really think about what does today actually look like and be intentional about thinking about the day. That's really what a perfect morning looks like. I think in the new year, I'm really excited to think about some other ways to be even more intentional. I feel sometimes the news sources that I do take in, even albeit minimal, so I still have the best news I can be taking in. I'm sure there's better news I can be taking in. It's Sudoku to get my mind up in the morning. Like, I just feel like there's some other ways that I can be super intentional. I was on TikTok the other day and I listened to someone say something along the lines of like, Kendall Jenner. And she was like, she looks at herself. She has a picture of her younger self in the mirror in her bathroom. And she says, I talk to that little girl every morning. And it just it reminds me to be super kind to myself because I'm really hard on myself. So I'm thinking through like ways, but that's a wonderful morning for me. I get up, I get dressed, I get out the door, and I'm having a good day.
You always are in a good mood, so it seems like it works. I actually have a picture of my 4-year-old self when I was adopted that I keep in our fridge for that same talking.
I love that. Yeah, that's something I think it's something I want to do.
You, in order to be great at your job, you probably work quite a bit and you work really hard. I imagine though that you have a pretty good personal life. It feels like you got a circle. How do you balance that? Are there boundaries that you set to protect your balance? Or do you just not have any lines?
I remind myself pretty often, this shit is not it. Like, this is not, like, this career stuff is just this career stuff. And you work hard and you play hard. And that's a really helpful reminder because you can get really caught up in what's actually not important. So I think, yeah, I'm just really intentional about, I'm actually, I say that, but I work on PTO and I reply to an email and that's not always really great. But I'm pretty good about understanding and remembering this shit is not everything. I learned this from during the pandemic, but intentional breaks in my day, like how I break my day up. How I know the day is over is when I get to the gym. I work out after work. When I get to the gym, work's done. That is the true separation of my personal life and my professional life.
You're a daily gym goer?
I'm a daily gym goer, yeah.
Good for you. You're swole. I need to have discipline. I need to get disciplined like you, man.
I'm a daily gym goer.
Okay. And that mental break, though, actually does help you.
It really separates it. And sometimes I get to the gym early and I'm like, oh, well, day's over.
I love that. All right. We are already at an hour. Before we wrap up, the final segment called the 2-minute drill. Quick question, quick answer. We'll wrap this thing up. I will say before we get there, Seabass, first of all, this has been way too fast of an hour. Second, I hope we could hang out. I don't know if it's New York or back in SF or some point. love talking to you. This has been
I
amazing.
would love that. That would make me so happy. You guys, I also want to say to the listeners, like Brian Bell is one of the most unique and intentional individuals that I've met as well, like an advocate for the folks that he represents. And they don't come like that anymore. Really, really grateful for you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. Remember that, people. All right, let's do this rapid fire. What's one critical skill every customer success professional should master?
Good listening.
Okay. Recommend one book that profoundly shaped your professional mindset.
Creating raving fans.
What's it called?
Creating raving fans.
Okay, we talked about it. Full circle. Creating raving fans.
Yes.
What's a quote or mantra that resonates deeply with you in both life and work?
2. What if it all works out and leave that person better than you found them?
My dad, actually, I was raised with leave somebody better than you found them, leave it better. So I love that one. What's a surprising skill or passion that most people don't associate with you?
I will break it down on a dance floor any day of the week. You know, because I'm this like big guy, like I don't meet me on a dance floor, it's going down.
I remember you gigging on an SKO down in Orlando last year. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
In the Adidas tracksuit. All right. I think you said you were thinking about 2025 and some more goals and being more intentional. Is there a major goal, either personal or professional, that you want to knock out for next year?
Now that work's over, I'm in that time now of reflection. What do I want this next year to look like and what I want this next year to be? But, you know, so it's super full circle that you asked me to do this. I started a podcast during the pandemic. And I remember thinking to myself, no one wants to hear these stories. So I never released it. It's just sitting in a file book in my computer. And I think a lot of it was fear, but even more of it was just genuinely like, I don't think a lot of it was just like, I know what to do, but even more of it was just fear. It's probably the proper way to put it. So maybe this is like breaking news. This is breaking news. I don't know. I do think I've always had this creative outlets. Like one year I wrote 100 letters to 100 of my friends and family. You know, some people talk about those letters still today, the 100 people on 100 day. Like I've just done so many of these really cool creative projects, and I want to do a big one next year. And yeah, whether it's a podcast, I don't know what it's going to be, but maybe I'll release those old podcast episodes and kind of come with some fresh ones. We'll see what happens, but I think that's
I understand, like, nobody wants to listen to me, but I'm like, I think people want to get better, and I'm just selfishly trying to get better. So that's why I'm doing this podcast, and it's just my challenge of I'm going to do 1 year of this and see if I can get better. Who knows what happens, but nothing else besides just doing it. And so I think for you, it's like, just do it.
Yeah,
what
100%.
Happen. All right, Seabass, I'm holding you now. Now you may be released to go and actually have your vacation.
No, you're not holding me.
I really appreciate you. I'm thankful. I'm honored that you were a guest. I will be reaching out to you in the new year. I wish you all the best. This has been the Level Up Podcast. Once again, I'm Brian Bell. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. Have a great holiday. And if you listen afterwards, well, have a great day. Talk to everybody later.
Cheers, everyone. Cheers. Thank you, Brian.